Welcome back, everybody. This week we're going to be talking about John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, and how it is the worst film in the John Wick franchise, but how that is A-okay. Alright, so maybe that's a little bit hyperbolic. I don't want to say it's the worst film in the entire franchise in the sense that it's a bad movie. I think it's a very good movie. I just think that the direction from John Wick 1 to John Wick 2 was like, oh my god, and the direction from John Wick 2 to 3, I think, is a little bit different of a trajectory. But there's a very good reason for that, and that's the main thing we're going to talk about today. First off, a little background. So, I love the John Wick franchise. I love action movie franchises more, I think, than I do a lot of superhero film franchises. My two favorite franchises in the world right now are the John Wick franchise and the Mission Impossible franchise, with the Fast and Furious franchise being a very, very close third. And the thing that those franchises have in common is, one, they're all live-action action films, sort of like throwbacks comparatively. And the thing I like about them is that they're largely star-driven. As much as I love, certain Marvel movies and DC superhero movies and things of that nature, a lot of these things are built around pre-existing properties, pre-existing characters, mythologies, and the characters themselves, so much work is done in the original material they're adapted from, that the actual films themselves are left a little wanting in terms of, star power. I mean, I love Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., I love all these guys, don't get me wrong, but there's something specific I like about the Mission Impossible franchise and the John Wick franchise, is that if you take Tom Cruise and Keanu Reeves out of the equation, the movies sort of don't work the same way. You could keep making Marvel movies with, any combination of up-and-coming, charming actors, and they'd work pretty well. But you take Keanu Reeves out of John Wick, and you're like, the action's still good, the style is still good, the tone is cool, but it's just not the same. And I feel the same way about Ethan Hunt's role in the Mission Impossible franchise, but that's for another video on another day. I remember the first time I ever actually heard about John Wick, I was at the Small Press Expo the year that the trailer debuted, and, world-renowned cartoonist Kyle Starks was there promoting his graphic novel Sex Castle, which is sort of a really brilliant, comedic, hilarious send-up of 80s action movies and stuff. And there's a moment in Sex Castle where the main character is digging up weapons that he buried, and it's a really funny moment, and literally that moment is echoed in the trailer for John Wick when he's breaking the cement in his basement to get at his gun and assassin coin collection. And I remember at the time thinking, okay, I know this movie's going to be good then, because it's so blatantly aping the tropes that Starks had really mocked and made fun of. Starks is an incredible guy. If you haven't read Sex Castle, you should. Or his new book, Assassination Nation, with Eric Henderson, kind of scratches a similar itch. Definitely check those things out. Anyway, that's why I wanted to see the movie. I was like, it's a movie about a guy whose dog dies, he kills a bunch of people. That's the stuff. And then when I finally got around to watching the movie, I realized it's kind of more than that. Maybe not a lot more than that, but definitely more than that. And the reason is because of Keanu Reeves. The John Wick franchise works the way it does because Keanu is such a unique performer. He's an incredibly gifted physical actor. He's been around for a long time now, to the point that, some of his weirder acting tics have matured, and the type of things people used to make fun of him for are his biggest strengths. And I think that his performance as John Wick, to me, is one of the greatest performances in modern action film history. He's just so good. There's a moment in the first John Wick when I realized I loved this character and this concept, and I would follow it to the ends of the earth. It's this scene right here.
Shit, Jonathan.
Hey, honey.
Oh my god. How long has it been? 4 years?
5 and change.
So tell me, how was life on the other side?
It was good, Eddie. Far better than I deserved.
What gets it for me is not the story of a guy who's attached to his wife and who dies, and this dog that she leaves him, and the dog dies, and his car gets stolen and stuff, and he gets drawn back into this world. None of that is really what got me. What got me is the fact that Keanu is playing this dude who's the greatest killer in the world, and he hates it. He knows that the thing he's good at is a terrible thing to be good at, and he finally gets out and has a bit of happiness, but he knows deep down that he never deserved that happiness, and that it was fleeting, and that he should be ashamed almost for thinking he could have it, you know what I mean? For thinking that his life could be good. And now he just doesn't know what to do with himself, and he's just lashing out indiscriminately. So John Wick 1 is very much about just this bloodbath, this endless carnage. And when he finally does, everything he sets out to do in that movie, he's not any happier. His wife's still dead. The dog's still gone. He gets a new dog. But what's he supposed to do? So enter John Wick Chapter 2, which I know some people don't think is better than John Wick 1, but spoiler alert, they're fucking wrong. John Wick Chapter 2 is perfect. John Wick Chapter 2, some people I know feel like the movie drifts away from what the first film is about and gets too deep into the mythology and basically becomes like a Bond movie kind of, and I don't give a shit about those opinions. They're just wrong. John Wick Chapter 2 is a perfect movie. It expands everything that people liked about the first film in such a unique and interesting way, without blowing it up too much. It's not like the difference between, I think, like The Matrix and The Matrix Reloaded, where the Reloaded really throws so many new things at the viewer that it's almost exhausting. I think John Wick Chapter 2 does a very good job of naturally expanding from where the first film ended in a way that is necessary for the series to grow, and also engrossing because it's genuinely fascinating. Derek Kolstad, the writer behind John Wick 1 and 2, and a couple of other like straight-to-video action thrillers and basically nothing else, clearly has like a unique mythology that he hinted at in John Wick 1. Two things that make John Wick special compared to it being a normal, typical action thriller is Keanu Reeves' performance, as already said, and the weird mythology of the criminal underground world. The fact that these people exchange like coins, there's like a special hotel for assassins that you can't like kill anybody at, and like all this weird, these people use telegrams and things. Like it's very unique, this weird like Art Deco steampunk approach to like criminal world building. Like it's just very obvious, like this Derek Kolstad dude was like a D&D nerd and was like, oh, you know what, people should just graft that onto film noir. Dunsky, whole new aesthetic, and it works. It's a really cool thing. It's something I'm super into. In film, we start dealing with the intricacies of that world and the implications of all those things. It's no longer just like cutesy background stuff to make the movie feel more special. It's like the bedrock of the themes of the story. It's no longer just about a guy getting revenge or whatever. It's now about like this larger world and what that world means. I've linked the reviews I wrote when the films originally came out to John Wick 1 and 2 in the description below, so you can read those for a little more context. So I'm not just like droning on about two movies that you've already seen. But the thing about John Wick Chapter 2 that stuck out to me is that it feels like a film about late capitalism. It feels like an entire movie about the network of debt and owing people and the things that one has to do to survive in a world that's like corrupt but has rules that make it somehow honorable. My original review for John Wick Chapter 2 was like 1,000 words longer, expanding on this metaphor, and my brilliant editor was like, you have to stop. This is not, people get it, just give it up. What I got out of John Wick Chapter 2 was that, it isn't just about John avenging his wife or trying to honor her memory or trying to move on. It's the fact that in order to get out of this life of being the world's greatest assassin, he had to owe someone, right? And he had to pay off this marker. And then in order to pay off the marker, he has to go further into like existential debt to get out of the situation. The whole movie is just him calling in favors and begging people for stuff and like, making new weird transactional issues. And it's just this constant thing until there's like a price on his head and everyone's trying to kill him. And that to me is like a super apt metaphor for like what it's like to like struggle to survive in today's economy. You know what I mean? Like it's almost normal for people to like go into debt in order to like keep up appearances and live. And I think that if you're going to explore the vast network of this criminal underground where there has to be honor even among thieves, it is still a corrupt and crooked system. And like everyone is sort of pledging fealty to this thing, the high table, like the people who like are in charge of this entire world. And like we only see a glimpse of them in John Wick Chapter 2, and we can already tell that they're fucking terrible people. I mean, everyone kills people in this movie, so I guess they're all terrible people, but you get what I'm saying. So, to me, John Wick Chapter 2 ending the way it does, with John breaking the rules in the Continental, being excommunicado, being completely taken away from all of these, side quest accoutrement, and having to go his own way, to me, put him on like this laser-focused path with like, okay, well, if the high table's corrupt and this system is terrible and you have to extricate yourself from it, the only way is to topple that system. Like, right? Like, this has to be moving towards a John Wick Revolution movie where the entire underground network of telegrams and coins and shit and weird old elevators just like, it's gotta go. Everything's gotta go. We have to be building to a movie where John just murders every member of the high table one by one until there's nothing left and people have to start fresh with something better. That to me was like, whoop, that's John Wick Chapter 3, great trilogy. He'll kill a bunch of people. He'll probably die in the process, maybe. He'll have like a weird Chris Nolan flashback of how much he loved his wife, and then, end scene. That's not exactly the direction the franchise is going anymore. But it's not because it's never going to get to that point. It's just because it's not time to get to that point yet if they want to keep making money off of this cash cow. In some of the other videos I've done where I talk about franchise filmmaking and superhero movies and tentpoles and things like that, I talk a little bit about, like in my Avengers video, I talk about how there's this sense of unearned character arcs, you know what I mean, where like these movies come out every year, and the longer you stretch a franchise out, characters change for like necessity of story, but not like really for their own arcs. And sometimes people have like these complete 180s for like no reason. I mean, you guys have seen all the arguing about Game of Thrones this past week and stuff. Like, this is clearly something where the average pop culture consumer can feel and sense when like character growth is unearned, you know? And I think the opposite problem sometimes happens, which is where a movie naturally kind of has like a this length flow, right, from point A to point B and like conclusion. Because you have to keep making money on it, you have to stretch those things out further and further to keep adding new chapters to keep, you know, the masses happy. So I had a bit of a feeling that that is the direction John Wick Chapter 3 was going to go in. When I looked at the writing credits for the movie, like I said, Derek Kolstad has written both films and basically nothing else. And on this film, he shares the writing credit with like a team of other writers. And I was like, nothing about the way the first two movies is written suggests that you need someone to like help this dude do what he does, right? Chris Morgan, very similarly, has written every Fast movie after like Tokyo Drift. And I think they're bringing in someone new for the next Fast movie. But he also wrote the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff. This one guy has like this specific weird action genre down to like a science, and like you just put that guy in a corner and let him cook, and then Vin Diesel and all the stunt teams will bring it to life. I figured Kolstad's kind of in like a similar like stylistic, you know, arena, right? But then I looked at who the writers for the new movie were, and one of them is the showrunner for Starz, the Continental TV spinoff of John Wick. They're going to have a show set on the Continental in the hotel, sort of expanding on the universe in TV form. Smart play, right? And then the other is a writer who worked on a film called Ballerina, that the studio who put out John Wick bought, and it was like its own standalone spec script, and then they're sort of, I guess, rewriting or reshaping it to fit within the John Wick universe so that they can expand the world. And I'm like, I wonder if those people are credited because they're going to be here wasting precious John Wick 3 screen time, setting up shit that I don't care about for later. And I was like, hopefully not, though. That probably won't happen. Spoiler alert, that totally fucking happens. There's tons of random little things in the movie that exist solely to seed and set up further expansions of the universe. And normally I would be like really, really mad about that. I would be really frustrated because I don't like that type of thing. And I'd rather just see the thing I'm here to see rather than get like trailers for other shit. But I really like the John Wick universe. I really like John Wick, and I really want more of these movies. Originally, I thought Keanu would do 3 and leave, but then recently in interviews, he was saying, you know, like he'll keep doing them as long as people want to watch them, and I want to watch them forever. That's a bad impulse. Maybe I should be more mature and accept that stories come to a conclusion and then we can move on and consume other stories. But I would like to keep every couple of years seeing John Wick shoot a bunch of people. I maybe that's fucked up, but that's what I want from cinema at the moment. And I have to accept that in order for that to keep happening, they can't just make one of these every year. It has to be bigger. There's going to be a video game. There has to be a TV show. There's got to be a spin-off with other non-Keanu characters, because what happens if Keanu changes his mind, or he gets old or injured, or God forbid Keanu dies? Someone else has to do this stuff, right? So they have to seed the other corners of the universe to make it a larger, sustainable IP. And I think that comes at the expense of a better sequel than we could have gotten. I think we could have gotten a better follow-up to John Wick Chapter 2 if this was just John Wick Chapter 3, not John Wick Chapter 3 / some preview backup stories to other stuff. Like, if this is a comic book, in John Wick Chapter 3 was like a 6-issue miniseries, it would feel like every issue ends with like a 8-page backup story promoting a later series. And there's nothing wrong with that, in the sense that, you know, if your goal is to keep expanding the universe, that's what you have to do. But John Wick Chapter 2 naturally expanded the universe from John's journey and arc, and we focused on John the whole movie. There are like whole sequences in this movie that John is not at all in. And you can tell, like you can really feel it. It's not like it was a natural little diversion. It's like every time it happens, you're like, I get that for this story to move forward, we need to follow a few other characters who aren't John Wick, but the movie's fucking called John Wick, and I just want to know what John's doing, you know? a little more about the movie itself. I'm not going to get into crazy heavy spoiler territory. It's opening weekend. Hopefully people get the chance to see it. I think it's a really fun movie. I do think people should go see it. I want to get that out of the way like right now. But the movie is strange. It's odd. So much of the setup for the trailers that we've seen is the idea that John has been excommunicado. He has no support from anywhere else in the community at all. And he's just going to have to be on the run with a $14 million price in his head, and everyone wants to kill him. So, like, you're set up to think that much of the movie is going to be him on the run from other hitmen. And, like, that is part of the movie, yes. But not really, because they already did this concept in John Wick Chapter 2. The sequence where he gets back to New York and there's a $7 million hit on his head and he's like running from hitmen, that whole sequence, if you made the whole movie like that, they already did that. They did that pretty expertly in a really cool set piece. And then, like, at the end, they blew up the entire concept and they're like, it's going to be like that, but, like, forever. Like, he's just fucked now. So you can't really make a 2-hour movie with Keanu Reeves just running from people. Like, I mean, you could just make set piece after set piece after set piece, but it would be very difficult for there to be a lot of variation in the different ways people can try to kill him. And because you've already got 2 of these movies under your belt, there is a limitation in the way Stahelski and his action team actually choreograph all the sequences. There's a limit to how many different types of judo throws you can see Keanu Reeves do. There's a limit to how many different surfaces he can stand on when he shoots people. Like, there's limits. So rather than banking the entire film around the concept of exponentially more devastating action set pieces, which I think we all were expecting and hoping for, the movie does give you the right amount of action. It gives you a good amount of action. It still delivers on that regard, but it moves away from the core concept of John on the run, everyone's trying to kill him. The movie seems like it's going to be John Wick versus the world, and instead it's like John Wick versus a bunch of people and the high table and some other stuff, but then it goes in a different direction. You know, you can tell this from like the opening 10 or 15 minutes of the movie. Instead of just opening up like now, like where he's excommunicado and on the run, the movie spends like 15 minutes leading up to when he officially is excommunicado. It goes back to the end of the last movie in that hour that Winston, Ian McShane's character, sort of like the heart of the franchise, has given him. And it shows him trying to get as much done in that last hour as possible to like get set up for when he's going to be completely fucked. Just to remind you that, like, this is the world that you have known watching John Wick, and soon he's going to enter an entirely new world where he doesn't have any of these things. And at first, I thought it was for that simple reason, just to really underline the concept of the whole movie. But it's not really. It does actually further the themes I talked about from Chapter 2, the idea of this sort of capitalist network of people and stuff, because of how intrinsically connected to it every single person is. It's not just that, like, John's excommunicado and no one can help him. Like, in movies like this, there's guys who are, like, there's guys who are, like, excommunicated, but then they have, like, an old friend or this person or that person that can help them. That's not how it is. Everyone that helps John in the movie, and anyone that helped John in the last movie, they're treated like traitors. You know what I mean? They're treated like monsters, and, like, someone comes out and has to, like, assess the damage and, like, what their punishment's going to be from the high table. So, really, what I thought was going to be a story about John being excommunicado and having to go directly to the source to, like, kill them all, to undo all these things, is really about John coming to the much slower realization that that's what he needs to do. The movie, to me, seems like it's much less about, all right, it's time for John to, like, go after the high table, as much as it is that John doesn't know who he is anymore or what he wants. All of the actions in the last 2 movies, plus this movie, take place over the course of a couple of weeks. The man's not really had any time to breathe. So there's a realization that in a different kind of movie, John would probably come to within the course of like one act of the movie, because his involvement is pared back a little bit to introduce new characters like the Adjudicator, new characters like the weird guy Mark Dacascos plays who acts like the Joker sometimes, like all these different characters and stuff, and to really give more meat to what Winston's going through and Lawrence Fishburne's character and just all these people. John gets pared back a little bit, and his journey is like, it happens in the course of like 2 scenes, basically. Like, in multiple scenes, John is doing stuff, he's fighting people, he's stabbing people, he rides a horse, and shoots people while he's on a horse. It's like
a battle between motors and horses, like technology versus horse.
And later in the movie is when he finally comes to the realization that, a character literally has to ask him, like, what do you actually want? Like, what is your motivation? What do you want to do at this point? Your wife's dead, the dog's gone. What is it? What's your deal? You kind of realize that, like, John doesn't know what his deal is or what he wants. He's only thinking about how to survive day to day in the situation, and that's life under capitalism. You know what I mean? Like, very few people, I think, are aware of what they really, really want from life, what they really want to be doing. They're just trying to survive. They're just trying to live paycheck to paycheck, stay on top of their bills, try to keep their credit okay. And as a result, they end up doing tons of things they don't fucking want to do. If there's something they're good at that's monetizable, they have to do that thing, whether or not it's actually good for them as people. John probably could have been anything else in this world. The skill this man has, like, imagine if he dedicated that towards, like, painting or, like, making bread, and not murdering a bunch of people. But that's the skill that's the most valuable to keep him alive in this world, so that's the one he has to rely on. So I was really grateful that they continued those themes and that I wasn't a crazy person for just thinking that at the time because I'm poor and depressed. But it's really stretched out. It takes so many diversions of him having to go to this place, to that place, with this character to that character and this marker and this coin to get, like, to what he thinks he wants. And then once he gets there, he realizes he doesn't want it, and then we get sort of like a big, crazy third act action sequence that I should have seen coming because it's pretty telegraphed, but, like, I didn't know that's where the movie was going to go. And as much as I viscerally enjoyed it in terms of just the pure carnage on display for, like, a half hour, it felt like a letdown considering that, like, I wanted it to be tied to this other stuff. Like, I had to make the realization about half of the movie that the movie I want, the movie I thought John Wick Chapter 3 was going to be, is probably going to be like John Wick Chapter, like, 5 or 6 at this point, realistically. The new status quo that we get at the end of this movie perfectly sets up a new television series, and it kind of sets up whatever this ballerina movie is supposed to be. There's just a bunch of fucking shots of this random ballerina. I wonder if she's going to be important later, so she's going to get a movie. And then it sets up John Wick in some fashion to come back and have, like, a different kind of movie now. Like, we're going to see a different side of him and some different stuff. And then after that movie, maybe we'll get the movie I'm talking about, or maybe, who knows how long they can stretch this out. And I'm kind of torn, on the one hand, hey, more John Wick movies. That's what I wanted, right? But the downside of that is that, a really, I think, strong, powerful, and I think timely story. The fact that there's this big, very popular action series that is saying such profound things about, like, the current, like, political climate and stuff, I think is cool and interesting. And I think I wish more people, like, talked about that side of it. But they can't really, because that side of it is, like, so buried underneath the necessity to keep the rest of the moving parts functioning. So much of this movie, like, there's a sequence in this movie that involves, like, what I call it, the Magneto room. There's just, like, a big room with, like, a bunch of see-through shit and, like, a chessboard in the middle of it, just because. And I immediately was like, oh, it's, like, so apt, because this whole movie is just moving pieces around on a chessboard to set up the next game. And even though I dig it, even though I like this world and I want there to be more of it and I want to see more of this stuff, I don't 100% know if it's worth it, if the movie I'm going to get is going to be slightly watered down. This is, like, the downside of franchise filmmaking in general and stuff. This isn't like the Fast and Furious franchise where they introduce The Rock and every movie they introduce new people at, like, a steady pace. And the fact that that movie is so much about the concept of family that as long as there's, like, a large unit working together to overcome obstacles, you can kind of stay connected. This franchise heretofore has made us believe it would be solely about John Wick and then the world would be sort of, like, secondary or background. And now it's having to, out of necessity, decentralize him a little bit to give everything more life. And I think that's cool. I like that. It's just that I don't think many of the side characters or other characters are, like, interesting enough to counterbalance it. I do think if they wanted to go in this direction, they should have done a better job of setting up other people that we would also want to follow. Maybe not to the same degree as John, but at least to the degree that we would not mind his missing in action for little sequences here and there. Like, if people watch the Fast movies and they really love Vin Diesel, when Vin Diesel's on screen and The Rock is there, you're like, oh, okay, this is, like, pretty close. You know what I mean? Here, it's like, hey, where's Keanu? Oh, well, I guess I'll watch Lawrence Fishburne yell a lot, And I like Lawrence Fishburne, and I love Ian McShane, but, like, it still feels like, I don't know. I got a movie that's very good. I'm really glad I watched it. I was very, very hyped. I'm very excited. I still want other people to see it. I think it's fantastic. It's just that it's not the movie I really wanted. And that's okay. I mean, I'm not going to write a fucking like fan petition or whatever and ask them to remake it or some stupid shit. I do still think it's really cool. I like a lot of the action. I like a lot of the stuff that happens in it. I do still think that this franchise is like music is like kind of shitty. And I think that there are little things that could be better. Like some of the dialogue in this movie is like, I rewatched John Wick 1 and 2 last week, and like John Wick 1 has some corny dialogue and some rough line readings, and 2 has a few moments like that. But this one in particular has a lot of stuff where I'm like, huh. I feel like John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum is the closest the franchise comes to being like a regular ass action movie. Like the action is still very good, but there are, for every set piece in the movie where you're like, holy shit, I can't believe John Wick did that, there's a sequence in the movie where I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm still watching him do this basic version of a thing he's already done. Parts of the big climactic third act sequence are like really pedestrian seeming and just kind of like a regular fucking action movie, you know, and like some of his adversaries in this movie just feel like regular boring action movie villains and not in a cool way. And I sort of wonder if there's a version of John Wick Chapter 3 that would have been more centralized and a little more strong that didn't bother trying to set up anything else. That's kind of how I feel about it. But honestly, if you're a real John Wick fan and you want more John Wick and you can't stop saying John Wick, then this is the movie we had to have in order to keep getting more. Is it worth it? Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I'm complaining about it, but I suppose in a way the truest adherence to the movie's themes about capitalism and stuff is, you know, the fact that this movie's artistic integrity is like purposely being undermined by the necessity to make more money for studios. So I don't know, maybe that's like some super meta thing they worked out that I wasn't even prepared for. But yeah, that's John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum in theaters now. Please go see it. It's definitely good. I mean, it's worth seeing. It's not better than John Wick Chapter 2 or 1, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, and it's clearly not that way for a reason. Maybe Chapter 4 will be something completely unexpected. Maybe this Continental show is going to be really cool. Who the fuck knows about this ballerina movie, but we'll see, I guess. Yeah, that's it. So, if you guys like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. If you have subscribed, hit the little notification bell icon so that you can get notified when I put out new videos. We'll have a new one next week about something. I don't know, I'm going to watch. If you guys have any movies coming up that you really want to see me talk about, feel free to hit me up in the comments or on Twitter and tell me, hey, Dom, I want to know what you think about this movie. And I'll probably watch it, unless it's that movie about the Beatles that's coming out that looks fucking stupid. Anyway, thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye.